I'm Nat, and a lot of you have probably met me or seen me before. I am the head of community at an organisation called Exceptional Individuals. We support people who are dyslexic, dyspraxic, autistic, ADHD, and everything under the rainbow that is related. We deliver these webinars every single week on a range of subjects to help educate people and to help people to create a sense of community and to know that you're not alone. Neurodivergence, which relates to ADHD or is ADHD, is really, really common. And we've been tackling subjects like the science, the history, like do I have, what do I do in the workplace? But today we're just going to be looking at some inspirational case studies of a few well-known and lesser well-known celebrities, athletes who have not just succeeded despite being ADHD, but probably because of it. As mentioned, these are the ones that we focus on, but we do support all areas of neurodivergence. These just happen to be the most prevalent. So the first thing I just want to ask all of you, who is someone with ADHD that you know / have heard of that is exceptional? Maybe the word exceptional is, it's a bit intense. So just anyone you know, like, are there any celebrities you've heard of, any well-known people who have done amazing things, or maybe even a family member? Like, is there someone who, despite the odds, have gone above and beyond? Okay, we got Will.I.am, nice. Do love a bit of Will.I.am. Emma Watson, yes, she is probably one of the greats for me. I think she has done amazing, and I love the work she does in the UN. Maybe Tony Robbins? Oh, I don't know that one. One of my brothers? Nice. It's good that you're supporting brothers. I like just one of them, not the other ones. So anyone else you can think of that, because we are going to be going into these today, but I always love if I learn people I've never heard of before, or if anyone we should do like a case study on. Okay, we've got Solange Knowles, Beyonce's sister. Nice. We are actually going to be talking about Beyonce's sister today, but she's actually really accomplished in her own right. Jim Carrey, nice. Ace Ventura. Celia Barber, Australian comedian, nice. Haven't heard of that one. Justin Timberlake, classic one. Yeah, Simone Biles, off from the Olympics, brilliant. Richard Branson, we got. Is Branson ADHD? I know he's definitely dyslexic. Dr. Josh Axe from YouTube. I haven't seen that one. I will check that out. Oprah Winfrey. I didn't know she was ADHD, to be honest, but I will definitely look into that. Will Smith we have. Jamie Oliver. Now, one thing I want to mention is that when we find who is or who isn't, the best form to go by is when they have self-declared. So let's say if Will.I.am says, I have ADHD, I believe him and I trust him. But if someone says, oh, I think Jamie Oliver has it, or Oprah Winfrey, and there isn't any first-hand evidence, I might say they have characteristics that resonate with being ADHD or on the spectrum of that, but I can't say definitively. So all the ones today, I've tried my utmost best to get primary sources to conclude either way. Anyway, with that out of the way, oh, Agatha Christie, nice. I know she was thought to be dyscalculic, which is like the writing part of dyslexia. So the first question I want to get to you, and we're going to keep this interactive, is which talent show judge do you know or believe to have ADHD? So we've got Howie Mandel, who does, I think, does he do American's Got Talent or like X Factor in the US? Then we have Will.I.am, who does The Voice. Then we have Adam Levine from Maroon 5, who also does The Voice. Or maybe you have zero idea. Oh, April thinks it's all of them. We got Will.I.am, we got one for Adam. And interestingly, okay, anyone else? Yes, Serena, all of them. Those of you who put all of them are absolutely correct. It's a trick question. I wanted everyone to feel like a winner today. So all of these talent show judges have ADHD. Wow. What are the chances of that? Well, as we go along, maybe the chances aren't as rare as you think they may be. A lot of these people, they use their kind of charismaticness, their unique sense of humour, which I can't help but feel that ADHD contributes to. So yeah, Howie is, Will.I.am is, and Adam is. And we are going to go into a bit more detail about not just why these people have done well in life, but how their success and their ADHD are somewhat entwined. So Simon Cowell can stop looking shocked for a moment as we go on to the others. Oh, April says, all these people are mentioned in a Watch Mojo video about inspirational people with ADHD. Thanks, April. I didn't steal from that video, by the way. I haven't seen it, but it's good to know that other people have backed up those facts. So the first one, we're going to start off with Howie Mandel. Now, if you're from the UK or outside of the US, you may have not heard of him, but he's very accomplished. He's a comedian. He does a lot of hosting shows, but he's very well known for working on talent shows. And what a lot of people may not realise is he has OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, with ADHD. And he talks, there are like articles in it, and it's really interesting. I mean, he mentions that in the 60s when he was growing up, having that symptom just didn't have a name. They just used to call it the Howie Mandel syndrome because it was so unique to him. There wasn't anyone else he was able to resonate with. Another like hallmark of his is if you ever see him, he'll always do like fist bumps or like, and he does that not just because he's a cool hipster, but because for him, with his OCD, he doesn't like touching people because he is one of those classic like germaphobes. He does not like that. So he'll find a different way of going about it. And he's also very sporadic. He says what's on his mind. And I think those qualities, particularly the ADHD ones, makes him a really good, authentic judge. He attends ADHD therapy and also takes medication from time to time. Now, a quick thing on medication, though we are going to be mentioning that a lot of these people today do take ADHD medication, we are by no means advocating for it or unadvocating for it. I think it's a very personal decision that you need to talk to your doctor, so do not take these as the medicine makes a success. It sometimes can help you manage some of the more challenging aspects of it. And a quote that I really like, he says, "I often do things without thinking. That's my ADHD talking." So he sees it as like a companion, but some people see it as like integral to who they are. So it would be really interesting to know how you'll see or feel it. One quote that I wanted to share from him is he says, "There's nothing wrong with a kid with ADHD or OCD. There's nothing wrong with a kid who feels pressure." And there's this whole like thing he goes on about, and he mentions this because he felt being wrong his entire life, like there was something broken. But yet he's been able to use his OCD kind of quirks. You see this image of him like bumping as like his kind of unique selling point, his little quirk, his signature piece. And his ADHD has allowed him to have that kind of bluntness, this enthusiasm, this eccentricity of him. And this is why I put him on the list today, because I love people who do not just learn to live with ADHD or any neurodivergence, but are able to have it as their signature, something which makes them them, and without it, it just wouldn't be the same person. Ever heard of Rick Green? Thanks, Jamie. I have not heard of Rick Green. Who is he? It'd be always good to know more. Next one, as some of you have rightly mentioned, is Will.I.am, or just William, as I like to call him. He has ADHD, and he admits it, apparently. And to be honest, for any of those of you who know Will.I.am, not personally, but through the TV or music, it's not surprising. This is one of those guys who has many, many different hats, and seemingly can do anything. And that's one common theme you're going to notice with people with ADHD. They tend not to be singular experts, but they also tend not to be generalists. They tend to be an expert in many, many different things. Sometimes they may not always be able to focus and hone down on one thing for a long period of time, but when they are super passionate and engaged, they will put all their eggs in one basket, and then once those eggs have settled, they'll quickly move them again and put them in a different basket. And I just think that makes a really unique skill. There's someone who I didn't include on this list today, but someone who used to volunteer for us, and he's an absolute definition of an exceptional individual. Phenomenal visual effects person, can do graphic design, he can do baking, cooking, can do everything, but he really struggles to do one thing for any long period, so unfortunately hasn't been able to get work, because for him, his brain doesn't work in that stereotypical 9 to 5. And you'll notice that a lot of the people on this list will have roles which are very varied, which works with their mind rather than against their mind. Oh, Jamie says in terms of Rick Green, he had a podcast called Totally ADD on YouTube and is a comedy writer and works on Red Green Show and was diagnosed later in life. Oh, thanks for that, Jamie. I'll definitely check him out because I do like people who are like lesser well known because again, it makes it more appropriate and approachable as possible. Okay, moving on to a great Will.I.am cute quote. I've got all this stuff in my head at the same time as I'm doing stuff, and I don't know how to stop or slow down. This is a really great, like, personal definition of ADHD. And at first that sounds pretty negative, right? Like, damn, I wouldn't want to have that type of mind. But then he goes on to say, but it's all good because I know how to control it. And that is the thing, you can't get rid of ADHD, but you can learn to understand it and kind of work with it. So one thing that Will.I.am does, which is again a really testimony to how he understands himself, is he works with it rather than against it. Those who work against ADHD are always going to struggle. And unfortunately, this is why a lot of children struggle on a day-to-day basis, because the school system doesn't allow for that level of flexibility, or sadly, most workplaces. So if you are struggling with ADHD, know that it's absolutely possible to use it as a strength, but it might take a bit of a readjustment and finding the right scenario or the right kind of environment that allows you to express yourself in a way that kind of works with you. But do not fear that. Do not think that I'm taking this for granted. Very much easier said than done. Okay, the next one is Adam. Now, if those of you might not know Adam by his first name, you would have surely have heard of his band Maroon 5. They got some great songs, as well as being the frontman for Maroon 5. He's also a judge on The Voice, and he has always had difficulties with attention with attention as a child. But when they went into adulthood, he was a bit shocked. He didn't think adults could have it, and yet for him, it never went away. And I think this is a really common misconception that ADHD is only for children. It's not. It can happen to male, female, young, old, medium, and anything in between. It's sometimes ADHD might minimize how it shows itself, but it normally doesn't go away completely, or if it does, it's definitely not in all cases. With most neurodivergences, it is for life, like a puppy. No, nothing like a puppy. And he says, I can have 30 ideas in my head, but I couldn't document any of them. So this is again a very classic idea of what ADHD is. You could be a fantastic entrepreneur, innovator, creative. You could come up with ideas out of thin air. But a lot of the time those ideas also disappear into thin air. So it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. And by me pointing all the positives, do not think that I'm underplaying the challenges because they are very much real. Because I was told I couldn't do academic level math by a teacher. Then when I went into basics, had it done in 2 weeks, and the new teacher told me I was gifted. Thanks for sharing that, Jamie. And you know what? I have a similar experience. I dramatically failed maths, but when I did it in college as a repeat, they taught me a different way, like modular, and I got an A. So it went from completely failing to an A, not because I suddenly got better at maths, but because the way they taught was significantly different and worked with me. Sharon says, I was diagnosed when I was 23. Looking back over my school years, it was very obvious I had ADHD, and I was a stereotypical hyperactive boy, except female. No, Sharon, that's great to hear. And not because you find it difficult, but a lot of the time we refer to women as ADD without the hyperactiveness. So it's good to see that it's very much possible to be female and hyperactive and to be male without the hyperactive. And he also says he still deals with ADHD daily. And I think this is a great thing. A lot of these things, we're not looking at a typical story of, rags to riches and happy ever after. ADHD is something that normally continues for the rest of your life. Yes, you might find ways of coping which makes it easier, but there are still going to be days where you find it very difficult because it is very much regulated to your emotions as well. So another quote from Adam is that he says, I thought my ADHD had gone away. Eventually, I realised it was something that was still there. I was able to work with my doctor to help manage my ADHD. And this is a really good quote because it highlights a few things. First of all, he thought it had gone away. And yes, there are going to be times in your life if you have ADHD where you think it's barely an issue. I don't even know why I tell people I have ADHD anymore. But certain things like environment, social situations, change, a promotion, losing your job, having children, getting married, they can all kind of trigger your ADHD and kind of make it more pronounced. So even if you think you've got it under wraps, know that it can definitely reappear later in life because like of circumstantial environments. And here he also says he works with his doctor. We are experts in helping neurodiverse people getting jobs, but we aren't doctors. So if you need medical support or advice, go to your GP if you have one. They are definitely the best people to signpost you or get you the support you need. And also, you might notice that he didn't say cure because you can't cure it, but what you can do is manage it. And with a lot of things like pain, mental health, any sort of hidden disability, or even physical disability, the goal isn't to cure it, but the goal is to manage it and live with it. So again, really good quote, which I think perfectly sums up the experience for a lot of us. Another thing I want to mention is that he is a really good role model for ADHD. He started, or at least led, a campaign called Own It, or Own Your ADHD. I recommend researching it. It's called ownYourADHD.com, and it was just about feeling empowered. Don't let it control you, let you control it, be in charge. And this kind of really fits in with what Will.I.am was saying amazingly. Claire just says, I call my ADHD brain my Pescetti brain. I like that. And I know I pronounced Pescetti wrong, but oh well, dyslexic. Anya says, I found that too. Sometimes it's the way they explain it that makes no sense to me. Explain a different way ahead if so obvious. I find complex clients easier, however, simple things can confuse me to the point I have to make it complex. No, I agree. Something is so easy, your brain is overworking and then it misses the point completely. It can be a completely different way of working. Nothing wrong with a Pescetti brain, but it does mean that you have to try things from a different approach. So moving on from music, our presenters at least, we're going to go on to the Olympics. So which ADHDer has won the most Olympic medals? So we've got the amazing Michael Phelps or Simone Biles. Both people are incredibly accomplished, but, who's really counting? So a few of you have said, most of you have no idea, and I don't blame you too. I had to do some researching. But if we're talking about in terms of medals, the amazing gym lass Simone, she would win. I think she has the most medals overall. However, when we're talking about Olympic medals, Michael Phelps, he was at least the most decorated Olympian of all time, I believe. And both of those have ADHD. Is it a coincidence that these amazing Olympians have ADHD? Well, I'll let you judge that for yourself. So a quick deep dive on Phelps. So he has achieved 28 Olympic medals. 23 of them is gold. He was diagnosed at 9, and at school he was very hyperactive, he was very unruly, and didn't really find the education system the best fit for him. Yet when he was going in the pool, it just worked for him. He found it because there was multi-central, there was no limit to how fast you could go, there was no one telling you to slow down. He was able to feel a lot freer. And his direct quote is, now I'm able to live life to the fullest. Now this sounds like a Disney movie quote, but it's a real one. Because for him, he found an environment where his ADHD was beneficial to it, and not just something that hindered him or held him back. And those medals as well. So again, yes, he's successful, but would he be as successful without his ADHD? Probably not, because his ADHD led him to find this sort of profession, because he needs some way to kind of cool down and relax. One quote which he said is, I could go fast in the pool. It turned out, in part, because being in the pool slowed my mind down. In the water, I felt for the first time in control. I like this a lot. We all have our special place, and we might use it just to calm down in, to relax, to unwind, or it might be our profession. But for me, being in the pool all day would turn me into like a prune. Not for me. But if I was like out in the forest, that works for me. I like being in nature. We all have our environments which works better for us. Sunjan has just said, many neurodivergents go into sports as it's not so academic. That's true as well. There's definitely academic sides in it, but it's more like stimulating. So say you learn the theory, it's then easily to apply it into what you're doing. And I do find with neurodivergence, this is something that a lot of us struggle with. Like, okay, you've learned algebra. How do you apply that to everyday life? A lot of the times in education, we do not join the dots. We keep them very separate. And our minds like narratives. Neurodiverse people love stories. And if we do not have things that are connected to a story or a purpose, our brain is just not stimulated and we lose it. So now on to Simone. Now you might have noticed she was in a little bit of a not controversy, but she was in the news a lot during the Olympics because she pulled out due to mental health and her well-being. Good on her. She may have missed out on a couple of gold medals, even though I think she still won a few in that one. But what she did do is set a great marker that your mental health, no matter what level you are, is so important. She's had ADHD her whole life and she's been on medication. Unfortunately though, her medication proved problematic when she failed a drug test because she had drugs in her system. But these weren't the drugs like the bad type. These were like Ritalin, your standard ADHD drug. And then there was a bit of a debate, does that count? And I think, they allowed it, was okay in the end. But for her, it was something that she needs to kind of level her out, calm her down, keep her focused. So for me, Simone is an absolute role model. And what you might have noticed about her, which you might not notice about the others, is that she's female. And we do not have that many female role models, not because they don't exist, but because they do not get as much publicity. So if any of you know any other amazing females who have ADHD, even if they're amazing but haven't seen the spotlight, like someone in your family, please do share, because I'm always looking for more role models. Ruby Wax, nice, thank you. I totally forgot about Ruby Wax today. I will definitely include her for the next one. Moving on to Harry Potter, because who doesn't love Harry Potter? Which Harry Potter actor has ADHD? And the last time we did this webinar, but we did it on dyspraxia, I asked the same question, but with dyspraxia. So it was quite a neurodiverse cohort. So, as most of you have said correctly, Emma Watson, Hermione Granger, has ADHD. She doesn't speak much about it, and to be honest, I don't think she necessarily has to. I always admire those who really go out and advocate for it, but there's also something to say, this isn't a big deal, this is just part of me. And Emma Watson does take ADHD medication. I don't know how much, if she still does, but she definitely used to. Radcliffe, on the other hand, has diagnosed dyspraxia, and dyspraxia is also a neurodivergence. It's around like motor coordination, so how you move with your speech, your voice, your body movements. Really interesting. To my knowledge, Ron Weasley, Rupert Grint, isn't neurodivergent, but I'm always careful not to say someone doesn't have neurodiversity simply because you don't know their stories. I don't know. In terms of characters though, I think Ron in Harry Potter had the more characteristics of ADHD. Yes, okay, we've got Paris Hilton also has ADHD. She definitely does. And I almost included Paris Hilton on today's list, but I chose not to because I don't know if I'd call her exceptional. She has done very well in life, don't get me wrong, but she's primarily known as like a socialite, and for me that's not good enough. But feel free to prove me wrong. I know she's been very successful in her own right, but I don't know, she didn't really meet the mark for me today. Miley Cyrus, nice. I did not know Miley Cyrus was ADHD. Is this kind of suspected or has she proven? Or when I say proven, remember, just personal thing. Anyway, a little bit Watson. So Watson is medicated for ADHD, even though he doesn't make a big deal about it. Yet, despite having difficulties with concentration, she was able to graduate from an Ivy League school. So that's like one of the best schools in the world, while also being Hermione Granger. I know she obviously did it afterwards, but even though she could have never done education, she could have just stayed in the film business, but yet for her it was really important. If anyone is most like their character, I would say it was Emma Watson. Her and Hermione seem like peas in the pod. She also stars in many, many films, and she's a UN ambassador. So she stands up for women's rights, she stands up for anything that kind of pushes UN Sustainable Development Goals in the right direction. She's an absolute powerhouse. So hopefully, again, you're seeing the theme that people with ADHD tend to have their fingers in a lot of different pies. They are both specialists and generalists at the same time. So Anna says, Hilton does a lot about abuse in centres for troubled children. Okay, no, that's good to know. I'm not dissing Hilton, but I struggle. I didn't want to just put here socialite or celebrity, but I will do a bit more involved. And also, if you research her quotes on ADHD, they weren't the most inspiring. So that's the only reason I didn't include her. Now on to Justin Timberlake. If you Google who has ADHD, Timberlake comes up all the time. And I've always used him as an example of what I just mentioned, of someone who does many, many different things and also does them very, very well. So he is a singer, he's a songwriter, he's a record producer, he's an actor, he's a dancer, he's a model. Timberlake really has done like everything, and every time he changes different like professions, even though they are related, he absolutely aces it. So most of you will know him as a singer. I would say he's very well known as an actor in his own right these days. He does a lot of things. But Timberlake, he's always doing multiple things, and I think that's pretty damn cool. Most people aren't as versified, or they get pigeonholed in one area. So a little bit info on Timberlake. He's a singer and actor, and he has both OCD and ADD. So he, once again, has the combined. He says he has OCD mixed with ADD, so that's attention deficit disorder without the hyperactivity. Even though we don't officially diagnose it, it still makes it easy to explain how ADHD affects them. And he says you try living with that combined. I think what he's saying is he's not saying, oh, try living with that. He's kind of saying it's a fun mix. By having these two things, it can make it very difficult. But him and Shuey, the talent judge, are very similar in those regards. He's won multiple Grammys, a couple of Emmys, and there's still no sign of him slowing down. We've got Claire says, Albert Einstein is my favourite ADHDer. Albert Einstein is a really good one, and I want to clarify, I think there's a lot about Einstein that resonates with a lot of neurodivergence, but can you 100% prove he was? No. We've cut his brain up, we've looked at his brain, we've read his diaries. We can never say for certain, but you can definitely say that a lot of his characteristics resonated with what we now know as ADHD. If any of you kind of saw our webinar on Neurodivergent or not, we really do a deep dive in kind of cracking some of these myths. Einstein was also suspected to be autistic and dyslexic. Absolutely right. We do have this probably a bit of a bad habit of saying Einstein was everything under the sun. He was such an amazing individual that we all kind of want him. I'm not saying he's not, but I'm also saying I can't prove that. Albert Einstein is my favourite because he apparently took breaks from his work to play his violin, and I do the same. Nice. Like I said, that's absolutely completely fine. If you resonate with someone and you can see yourself in them, then I would say, what's the harm? He has a very messy desk like me. If that is proof, I'd say that's proof enough. The messy desk. What musician has not spoken about having ADHD? So which ones of these do not have ADHD to the best of our knowledge? Do we got Solange Knowles, Beyonce's sister, Loyle Carner, the rapper, David Grohl, the Food Fighters and former drummer of Nevada, or Damon Albarn? Nice, a lot of you are good. Okay, I was going to say a lot of you are good, like we've only got two of them. Yeah, nice, nice. You may have not heard of all of these, but I can confirm Solange does, and again, another great female example. We really need more of those. So I know at the moment we've got Biles, Knowles, Wax, Watson, Loyle Carner, you may have not heard of, but he's a really great, I think, M&E award-winning rapper. He's also runs his own ADHD cooking school, which I think is called Chili Con Carnes or something like that. He's worked with exceptional individuals a few times when we've done events. A really, really great guy. Then we have Dave from the Food Fighters and formerly Nevada. And Damon, who is not, to the best of my knowledge, though he has all the qualities of ADHD, he does absolutely everything from gorillas to Blur to Chinese operas, but to my best of the knowledge, he isn't. We spoke about Beyonce's sister, but I want to go beyond being related to the Queen. I want to go on to how is she amazing in her own right, and she absolutely is. So she says, I didn't believe the first doctor who told me, but then the second doctor told me I had it. So she was in denial that she has ADHD. She had all the characteristics, but she went in later and got diagnosed. Wasn't keen on the first one. The second one backed it up. The symptoms, she says, seem to apply to everyone around me in the industry. Now, is this a coincidence that everyone in the entertainment industry have symptoms of ADHD? It's not a coincidence, no. It's not saying everyone does, but there are certain professions that certain ways of thinking naturally gravitate towards. People with dyslexia will typically go to more hands-on roles. People with ADHD will typically do roles that are really varied. Those with autisms will do like data processing. It's not to say you're destined for those types of jobs, but if you are struggling to find what career works best for you, it's not a bad starting place by any means. Solange is a great singer. I recommend checking out her music. Different to Beyonce's, but equally as good. She does all her writing as well, and she's an artist. And fun fact, I actually have danced next to her. Long story why that happened, but I did get to dance next to her once. And yeah. Now, next one is Loyle Carner. He is an NME award winner, like I said, but I'm pretty sure I pronounced it wrong. And check him out. I mean, he's been around a while now, but I still kind of see him as an up-and-comer. Apologies for the gif. I know he looks like he's dying on that chair. However, it was the only one that wasn't making me dizzy. And he says, I thought I was this wrong and crazy kid no one else understood, which is a really common thing for a lot of us. We feel completely alone, misunderstood. He says, I didn't know anyone older with ADHD. I didn't know what prospects I had. And this goes back to the misconception that ADHD is only for children. Absolutely not. It's not like a second we turn 18, the symptoms disappear. A lot of the time, though not always, they do persist into later life. Claire says, Sir Richard Branson has done great things with his out-of-the-box thinking. No, exactly, and a lot of these people, it's thinking outside of the box, which is a bit of a cheesy phrase these days, but it does say what it means. He now says, though, in terms of Carner, that ADHD is a superpower, or is a superpower. Now, I'm not one for over-glamorizing neurodivergence, and I'd love to know your opinions, just because I think it puts a lot of pressure on the rest of us who are neurodivergent and aren't, selling out massive concerts, that we should be doing amazing things. But I do think, used in the right settings, ADHD can 100% be a strength. And in the right situations, it can be a superpower. But I don't think it is initially. I think you do have to do a little bit of work in order to get the best from it. But feel free to say your own views. Sanjana says, I also thought adults could still have ADHD and dismissed this for could not. For ending up getting very late diagnosis in middle age. Unfortunately, a lot of people do, and it's one of those things that has been proven for a long, long time that adults absolutely can still have ADHD. But once a rumor or a misconception or old science is started, it's very difficult to clear that. You know the old expression, mud sticks. Now, we're doing good. Give me a big hearts up or a thumb up if you're still with me. And before we get on to Dave, Giorgio says, you don't have to compare your wins to celebrities. I ADHD my superpower, but only because, like Batman, I had to work hard to make it that way. Are you also a billionaire? No, I do agree with you, and I use that similar definition, but with Spider-Man a lot. You don't become a superhero overnight. You have to work bloody hard for it, but anyone can be. And Batman used his his trauma as a child, falling into that well with bats and his mom and dad being murdered, as his kind of like guiding force. So he turned something which was initially very bad into something which has saved multiple lives and locked up the Joker countless times. So on this one with David Grohl, sorry, I'm really bad at pronunciations, but you know the guy. He has done this really good YouTube video, and I'm not going to play it all now for the sound reasons, but we're going to include it in the description of the video. And he kind of talks about his experience in school, and this is on his official YouTube channel, which is really good. Actually, I think it's on the Foo Fighters one. But in a nutshell, he says, I was stubbornly diagnosed, impended by a raging case of ADD and an insatiable desire to play music. I mean, what a great quote. Disengaged, sorry. And I think that makes a lot of us, like, he really kind of emphasised the passion and the danger that comes with it. Now, in terms of that, he also, we're moving on from him. We also got Smirnoff, and I kept thinking we were talking about alcohol. So anyway, in terms of Karina Smirnoff, you may have heard of her. I think she's more well known in the US. She's with Dancing in the Stars, and she is a performer. She does a lot of the dancing with the celebrities, and she only really spoke about her ADHD in 2009, which is really recent, and she's probably been struggling or finding things difficult most of her life. She said that most people do not know about the other part of her life. She's an adult with ADHD. And a lot of people do not talk about it. And though you have every right not to talk about it, by being more vocal about it, you do unintentionally probably help other people along the way. She has not only used her ADHD to channel it into her dancing, but she's also done it and become a 5 times US champion and even a 1-time World Trophy champion. An absolute another powerhouse. Another one, which again is more US focused, but I thought really interesting, was Ty Pennington. He's a host and artist, carpenter and author. He does those kind of like DIY shows. He was always known as a really hyperactive kid, complete distraction. I think his mum like supported those with special needs, and like the teachers like, yeah, your son, he's a troublemaker, that one. Doctors weren't even sure how to treat his behaviour. Yet he started taking medication in small doses after speaking with a doctor, and for him that worked. Again, I'm not promoting medication, but it does work for some people. He now channels his ADHD into his careers, and when you watch him, he's really energetic, really fun to watch, and he's able to do his DIY, carpentry, and do presenting at the same time. And for him, that kind of fires all the different cylinders in his brain and allow him to be great how he is. Next one, but hopefully you'll learn some that you may have not learnt before, is the lovely Channing Tatum. Sorry, I picked a GIF when he's got his clothes on, but it is early in the morning for the UK. He says, you get put in typical lessons and you say, all right, I'm obviously not like these kids. So you're kind of nowhere. You're just different. And this isn't an inspirational quote. This is talking about how he struggled, how he always knew he was different, but there was no label attached to it. There was something kind of missing. But yet, this is something that he thought of himself when he was younger. He's now gone on to be an absolute, well, I wouldn't say rock star, but no, like movie star. And he is like a household name now because of the work that he's been doing. I want to know though, because we've mentioned a bit about people, the challenges of finding out later in life or not always having the knowledge that you need in order to make the best decisions about your life. How old were you when you were diagnosed? Or if you do not have ADHD, maybe someone you know, like brother, sister, your children, how old were they when they were diagnosed? Because it'd be really interesting to know if most of you attending today were diagnosed earlier on or later in life. So we got one as 13. Sarah says it was 54. That must have been an interesting experience. We got 23, 48. No, I think the average age is like probably around about 7, 5. That's when most people are diagnosed. And it is less likely to be diagnosed in adulthood just because less people even cross their mind that it could be ADHD. But more and more it is becoming more common because I think more doctors are in the know, there's more understanding, and there's less stigma. Because the other thing is, maybe adults are aware that they have ADHD, but they don't really want to find out. I'd rather not know. 28, but I've always known. Yeah, that's a great one. And that's one thing I'd always say to people, though getting a diagnosis can be really important, ultimately it's about yourself. Would you benefit from it? If you resonate and the support strategies that work for someone with ADHD works for you, then all the power to you. Okay, we've got, I'm not officially diagnosed, however, I was assessed by my uni's SPLD, Special Learning Department assessor, who told me I'm very likely have it. I may not have a formal diagnosis, but I was 19. And I think that's fine. Like, again, you can just say, oh, hi, just so you're aware, I resonate with having ADHD. Or you might say, a lot of the characteristics I relate to. You're not lying to anyone, but if the support that's available helps you, then you're only doing yourself a disservice by not utilizing the strategies that have already been found. Not everyone is lucky enough to get a diagnosis, sadly, and I agree. That's why at Exceptional Individuals we support people regardless of diagnosis, because there is a gender bias when it comes to getting diagnosed, and there is also it depends how affluent you are. If you're from a well-off background, the chances are you'll be in a school that has those supports. Karen, I work with families and the parents quite often realise that they are when their kids are diagnosed. Absolutely, Karen, and that is because it's hereditary. It runs in the family. They'll realise there's something going on with the kid. They'll get the support, they'll get diagnosed, and they'll say, wait a sec, I see the exact same qualities in myself. Sunjan says, I was like knew something was wrong, but when I was at school, the only helped the most extreme students. Absolutely. Unless you're kind of like, I don't know, just banging your head against a wall, they typically do not help you. And a lot of the time, it's those who have a very mild way of expressing it. It could present itself in more extreme ways later in life. So it's why you should get the support early on, even if it doesn't seem like it's a massive roadblock at that time. And he says 31, but didn't know what it was really. I was focused on my chronic pain at around 38. It hit me when I read about the links between fibrio, that word, and ADHD. I got every symptom. Thank you. Sarah also says sister-in-law had it, diagnosed at 54. Nice. Got Myers 20 and getting professional diagnosis at the moment. Got mother has ADHD. Wow, so many great examples. But hopefully what you take away from this, you can be diagnosed at any age and it can affect you at different parts of your life depending on the different circumstances. The last one I want to leave you on is my absolute favourite. People say, it's rocket science. Well, we've got an ADHDer who is an actual astronaut. Scott Kelly, who was in the space station, the International Space Station, for an astonishing year. And I think he has a twin brother and did some really interesting studies on him. But yeah, what an absolute pro. ADHD does not have to hold you back. You can literally go to the moon and back if you so wish. It doesn't mean that there aren't challenges attached, but it does mean that if you find the right setting for you, something that you get really passionate about and that has the flexibility that works for your brain, you can do anything. Do not feel though that I'm making this all sunshine and roses. We've got a long way to go in society before people get the same opportunities that some of these successful people have had. But it's definitely worth knowing that there are people pioneering the way, and it's definitely not impossible. So, last thing I would like to ask any of you, do any of you have any success stories, either with yourselves or with any of the people you mentioned? Have anyone like been able to overcome something? Are there any well-known people, professional celebrities that we may have missed out? Anna says, I run community organisation and got a few rewards for my work. Oh, that's nice. No, thanks for sharing. Some of the wins, again, don't have to be huge, but can be still really good. Tracy says, I failed at school, but I later got first class degree in occupational therapy. Nice, Tracy. I've been thinking about doing that myself, so it's great to know you were able to do that. Mahai, again, apologies if I mispronounce, says 20, I've published 5 novels so far, but I'm still getting professionally diagnosed. Wow. What are those novels on? I'd love to know. Thanks, Tracy. Tracy says go for it. I'm definitely thinking about it. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe next year. I'd love to be a doctor one day. I opened a special education needs childcare service called Seni in Jan 2020. I built it from scratch in a pandemic, and we are now the biggest provider in the UK just 2 years. That is amazing. Definitely get in touch with us. I would love to know more about the organisation. Please check out Dietary Aids on the YouTube Dr. John Joss. Okay, we'll check those out. ADHD, procrastination, maybe next year. Yes, Tracy, maybe I am just doing a classic procrastination. But I promise you I am actively looking at the moment at different courses. Thank you. They are romance fiction. Ooh. Claire says, I had a terrible experience at school with having undiagnosed ADHD. So now I work as a mentor for young people in Essex, supporting them with mental health and well-being. Great. This is really great. I love hearing these so much, honestly, because though these celebrities are great and everything, ultimately they're not real people like me and you, and sometimes it can be quite difficult to pitch yourself as an astronaut. Now, I like to end on this if I can. If any of you do have ADHD and you're struggling in the workplace, there is support available. Like at Exceptional Individuals, we can get you free workplace needs assessment. It's not an official diagnosis, but you do get the exact same support available. So you could get like different equipment, mentoring, coaching. All you have to do is get in touch with us and we can let you know more about that. It's through a scheme called Access to Work, which is available to anyone in the UK. If you are not in the UK, however, there is still support available, but it's I'd say get in touch and we can let you know what's available into your country, the much we know. If you would like to catch up on any of the other ADHD ones we've done, please do. Some examples include ADHD in pop culture, where we look at how it's been represented in the media, or maybe ones like a brief history of ADHD. How have we gotten to where we've gotten to? Nice. Thank you, everyone. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, catch you soon.